Today we're going to walk through the steps to load a flat file using bimlsnap to create an SSIS project to load it into SQL Server. Here's the flat file that we're interested in. It's country.csv, comma separated. I'll open it up and we can take a look at it. While I'm here, I'm going to pick up the very first line because this is going to give me the column headings. So the table that I need to create should use, in fact, these column headings for the destination table. So I'm just going to put that in the clipboard. Next, I'm going to go into bimlsnap. And from bimlsnap, I'm going to create a project. We'll call this flat file load. I'll put it on the no alerts template. And so now I've got a project. Since I put it on the no alerts template, you see we have a connection in the project called SSIS data. This is for logging, row counts, errors, etc. So it's a runtime framework database. I need a destination connection, which would be in SQL Server. So I've got an OLADB connection here. If we open up the connections, we can see it's pointing to localhost in the staging database, which is just fine. So I'll go ahead and move that into my project. So now I've got my destination. But I also need a source connection. The source is going to be a flat file, so I need to go to flat file connections. Then I'm going to go into flat file formats because it needs to know the right format. I've got one created here, but I'll show you what it looks like to add a new one. Notice it bases the format on your metadata schema, or one of the tables in your metadata. So without that, it doesn't know how to define the flat file that you're going to point to. So if you haven't created it yet, you would first want to create that table. We do have a utility to help you create the table, and that is under this utilities option, flat file utilities, and it's called flat file header utility. You paste in the very first line of the CSV. You move to the next text box, which will give you distinct values because it's possible the CSV has repeating column headings, which is an issue. And finally, you click on the last arrow, and now you have a create table script. So you can copy that. I'll do Control-A, Control-C, then go into Management Studio. Here's our staging database. Create a new query, paste in the script. Now I want to call this country, so I'll go ahead and type COUNTRY, and we'll create the country table on SQL Server. So now we should see that that it's there. All right, now that it's created, you actually have to collect the metadata for that. So if you create a new table and you want to reference that metadata, you do need to refresh your metadata. So I've got a project to do that, metadata refresh. You always run the run all. It's always a good idea to check your parameters too. It's going to update localhost, put the metadata in the bimlsnap v2 database. That's actually the name of it. We're going to use the friendly metadata server name of dev instead of localhost, or a longer server name. We're going to pull the metadata from the SQL Server, localhost, and runtime framework information will go into the SSIS_data database. So I'll go ahead and run this. This will update, and this project is part of the samples that we provide. If you don't have a copy of this database, just ping us at info@bitracks.com, and we'll be happy to send this to you. So now that it's completed refreshing, I'll go ahead and close out of this. Go back into bimlsnap. Now for the flat file connections, when you go to flat file formats, you can see that we've called this flat file format country. We use almost all the same defaults that it normally pops up. It's not Unicode, so I unchecked that. But then country is defined by the metadata that is on the server under the dev server, which is our friendly name, the staging database, DBO country, which we just loaded a minute ago. So that is our flat file format called country. The next thing we want to do is create a flat file connection. And you can see we've already got one here, but we'll just run it through real quickly. We called it flat file. We did point directly to it. This is on our C drive, flat files. So just C flat files country.csv is the actual location. It is using the format we just defined, using the same name, country. So that's our flat file connection information. It does have two different parameters, so at runtime you can set the path and the format accordingly. The format won't change, but the path could be if you move it to a different environment. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move that connection into the project. So now I have my source connection, and I have my destination connection, and of course the framework. The parameters, you can see I've got 3 parameters for the database. If we open up the parameters, look more closely. The country database automatically generated these parameters for us based on the connection information. Also, you can see the parameters for where it's going to look for the flat file, and of course flat file format that it will expect, and then your runtime database options. So our connections are set, our parameters are set. Now we need a package. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new package. This will be a data flow package. I'm going to call this flat file to stage. The source connection is a flat file. I don't have any query, of course. I just leave that blank. You can see down here the file path for my flat file that I chose is the CSV with the format that we had just created. We need to give it a destination. We're going to put OLADB connection for country, schema DBO, and the country table. We're going to truncate it ahead of time, use identity insert. No, we don't need to do that. Click on save. So now we have a package. We can go ahead and then build at this point. After we build, we can pick up our BIML and our parameters by cut and paste or use Visual Studio Deploy. But since this is the first time we built this, notice it has created another package for us, which is the run all. I want to use this because when you use the run all at the end, it logs that the project is complete. So you always want to add it. It creates it for you, but you always want to add the run all package. It simply is called run all dash and the name of the project that you see up above. Since I changed the project, I want to build it one more time. Now I've got everything that I need within my BIML script. Instead of copying and pasting into Visual Studio, I'm going to use VS Deploy. It's going to default to the server name and database that we used last time. In this case, it's fine, so I'll click on Connect. And here I want to give it the name of the project and the folder. Now I did this previously, so it knows exactly where to put this, but if it did not come up with the right folder, just click choose folder. In this case, I put it on the C drive under bimlsnap. Here's the flat file load. Keep in mind you want the project, not the solution, so you always select the second one or the nested one underneath the solution. If you choose this one, it will not go into the right place, so choose the nested folder of the same name, which you see right here, flat file folder, flat file folder. Alright, so go ahead and copy those files. They copied successfully. Now I'll open up my project. I already had a project created with that name, so I'll go ahead and open that up. Here's the project parameters we just copied over. You can see the country database, localhost server, staging database, flat file format, same location, same flat file format, so everything is in good shape. If I open up the BIML script, you can see that the flat file format is in fact defined based on all of the column headings that we had in that flat file table. So now these are all columns in a relational table in SQL Server. We'll just right click and choose generate. This will build the BIML file for us. Here's our run all. Notice if we open up the run all, the first thing it will do is invoke the package we just built, but when it finishes with that, it'll log the project as complete, so it'll log it properly in the framework database. If I click on start, it will execute this package, populate table, and the row counts don't seem to be quite right. Not quite sure why, but the logging is fine on this. So for example, if we look at the original file, I'll go ahead and open up that in Notepad. It counts them. We've got 248, although the first row is a header, so the number of true rows is in the database would be 247. If we go into SQL Server, look at our country table, we should have 247. If we look at the logging, it'd be the SSIS data database, and look at the batch log. That's the entire project. The logging database SSIS batch log. You can see the 247 were moved. If you can look at the package level, so this is a summary of all the packages. This is the detail at the package level, and so you can see that this ran just a minute ago at 1550, and it brought in 247 rows. So we're in good shape with the actual recording of the row count as it brought it in. Now we do have an option. If you don't want to use this approach, we have a separate utility called the flat file load utility. It's not a part of the official download, but we'd be happy to provide that to you. Just email us at info@bitracks.com. That particular program is called flat file load. This is a standalone utility that streamlines bringing in flat files. It'll also load multiple flat files that exist in the same directory, and this is integrated into bimlsnap using the pattern execute process. If we open up this particular utility, you can see that it also stores its own connections and data flows and file formats and connections for the flat files stored in these subdirectories. They're under the console folder, and so they're actually defined here and stored as a bimlsnap file. To use this, you just double click on flatfileload.exe, and the first thing you do is you define your flat file source. I did this a little earlier, and you can see it's pointing to the very same location. It actually determined on its own the encoding, the column delimiter, the row delimiter, header in first row. Actually, yes, there is a header in the first row. Header rows to skip. Yeah, we'll skip the first one. That's a source. Go ahead and save that. As far as the destination is concerned, I did this a minute ago. Again, localhost, the staging database, the same database. Finally, we have the run, and I called this the load country bimlsnap. The source file is what we just defined here a minute ago. The flat file format was connected to it also in flat file source. As far as the connection is concerned, we defined that as localhost. And finally, the destination table. You just give it any table name that you would like to use. It will auto-create it for you. If you choose this create or replace table option, you can also have it truncated. If you're not doing create or replace, you could truncate it for every load, etc. Finally, what you want is a command line in order to run this. So when you use execute process pattern in bimlsnap, it's going to want to know what command line that you want to run. And so you just click on construct that command line. And so here's the executable. So we're going to run the flat file console load.exe, and we're going to run the data flow we just defined, which is load country bimlsnap. So that's the actual command that we're going to use. Again, you have to download this particular utility, and inside of this utility, if you look at the console, this is the runtime executable that you invoke, and it'll run the definition. The nice thing about this, it'll create the file for you, and if you have multiple files, or no files, but if you have multiple files, it'll go ahead and successfully load all of them within the same directory, assuming it's the same format. And if you have nothing to process, it's an empty folder, then you don't get an error. So how does that look in bimlsnap? If I go back to packages, I created this just a minute ago, execute process. So I'm going to go ahead and move this package over into my flat file load project. If I double click on this, you can see how it's defined. So the package qualifier, load country 1, I gave it the name of country 1 to differentiate it. I'm going to run the flat file console load.exe. I'm going to give it that very same command line, although this is an expression, so I had to add the double quote before and after. Each of these are SSIS expressions. Finally, I do have a variable or parameter that defines what folder I want to run this under, and I do this so it can find the flat file load executable. You could also put it in the path. So that's how that works. Now notice both of these are sequenced at 0, meaning they would run in parallel. So if I went ahead and built this, come back here, you'd see it would give us a package group. And there's no reason these couldn't run in parallel, although they are hitting the very same flat file. I doubt if that would be an issue. If you want to run them in parallel, you do have to move the group over. Otherwise, you can sequence these to run serially. And I'll just give number 100, 200. Okay. Now I don't need the group, and it should actually disappear in the next build. If I build this one more time, come back to packages, yeah, it's gone because it doesn't need the group anymore. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll go into the Visual Studio Deploy, we'll connect. We recently did this, we can go to the Recents tab. I'll pick up parameters just in case, although I don't think that changed. No, actually it did. I added a parameter. So good idea to always pick up both of the biml and the project parameters. Choose copy file. And now it moved it over into Visual Studio. Go back to Visual Studio. It knows something changed outside the environment. So we'll click yes to all. Okay, now if we check the connections, okay, now it knows where to find the script. Flat file load location right there. Right click and generate to the biml. Since these objects have already been defined, it'll verify you sure you want to overwrite them. We'll click on yes. Okay, now notice we have 2. We always want to run the run all. I'll double click that, and you can see it's going to run these serially. I'll go ahead and click start. It'll run the first one. It will truncate it beforehand. Ran execute process. It all went pretty quickly. What we'll do, we'll stop, we'll go into the framework, we'll look at the batch log. Okay, the batch log, flat file load, it ran 2 packages, did a total of 247. Yeah, the reason it said 247 is the second package did not log row count. So in other words, it executed this process externally, but it did not catch the row counts. Whereas in the data flow, it does catch the row counts. You can actually work around that. There are ways to use execute process and then update this database within the program you shell to with the number of row counts, but that would be additional coding in order to get that. And that's the summary. We'll just do the last minute check of the database, staging. Let me refresh that. So we have country 1. Look at the first country. We got 247. The second country, 247. So that's 2 alternatives to load flat files. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to ping us at info@bitracks.com. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time.